Hey, this is Rice for my third installment. I've noticed I'm not really good at easing into what I want to say, so I'll dive right in like I always do. This video is going to be quite long from looking at the notes I've made. Anyway, so I'll wrap up the Mythic Plus stuff. So after playing Unholy for most of my time in WoW, I made the transition into Blood. And then I learned to play Frost, but I only played Frost in PvP. I had never played another class as well, so I played DK up until maybe halfway through in Taurus progression. Anyway, so one of the reasons I knew I chose to move on to Blood was that it was really strong. I think everyone knows this. And I got up to, well, in comparison, Unholy wasn't for DPS. I got up to 3.8k on Radio.io, and then I stopped. I stopped because I was burning myself out. I didn't really have any other games that I was playing. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So going back to Taurus, I really liked the heroic set for DKs. Normally I'm not the person for transmogs, but seeing one of our artifact appearances for our weapon, the red one, well, it was one of the red ones anyway. Basically I found that it worked really well. So on release we cleared normal and most of heroic on the first raid day. I think we cleared up to Agrimar. Then we cleared Agrimar and Argus on the next raid day, and then we moved on to Mythic. Not much to say about the normal and heroic clears. So moving on to Mythic, we cleared Garothi in one night. I heard that was pretty good as far as casual Mythic raiding goes. We moved on to Hounds. Hounds is alright. I don't have a particular opinion on the fight. It wasn't good for DKs though, because of all the movement. And the Trinket was really good for DKs, I remember this. And I think it was for some other classes, like Feral, and I think it was Beastmaster. I don't know. But there were definitely some other classes that really wanted the Trinket as well. On High Command, this was a good fight for DKs, because we had AMS and IBF to deal with the grenade that stuns you. I was human as well, so I could use the racial to get out. I remember one of our rogues who still raids with us today. He kept messing up the grenade mechanic. I think it pissed him off quite a bit because he G-quit. But he came back later and he was benched or something. Later into the progression of the raid, he came back. I think it was on Iminar or Kingroth, one of those two. Portal Keeper. Not much to say. Kind of reminded me of Heroic. I wasn't sure what the main difference was. Then we went on to Ina. Ina we cleared in 9 tries. I was expecting more from the encounter. And I did, and so coming back to re-clear this encounter was a real struggle, because there was something to do with the ads doing too much damage, or we were unsure what ads counted towards finishing the boss. So we tried killing different packs, and I think it was because we had a different raid setup, and our first raid setup that we used to progress this boss the first time, like by chance they were killing all the right ads, all the right packs, but then when we came to re-clearing it, we had to figure out which packs they were killing. we ended up figuring it out, obviously, and it was all smooth sailing on the reclears once we figured it out. Going on to Imminars. Up until this point, I didn't have DBM installed. I'm not sure why I didn't have it. I think I was just being lazy. Anyway, so I installed DBM because the main reason was because it would let the healers know who needed to be dispelled once they got hit by the sleep. And I didn't have that add-on, so the healers didn't know whether I was supposed to be dispelled or not. And no one suspected a thing, by the way, because I think they just thought that I hadn't updated the add-on. So there was an update for the add-on when we were progressing at this point. Anyway, so one of our major issues with this boss was the bridge. We were rushing across it. So naturally, we ran into more mines than necessary. People died and they got knocked off and all that stuff. I got knocked off a couple of times. I didn't know you couldn't touch the edges of the bridge. Well, you can, but like the dot damage is so much. You need to be asked to be spot healed if you're gonna survive. Anyway, so the next boss, Kangaroth. The boss was really bad for DKs. It was horrible. Especially for Unholy, because our pets had to run from ad to ad. And there was lots of running in general in the boss. And I was grateful for the lock portals that we had and the roars from the druids when we had to switch and run around. It would have made the boss a lot harder if we didn't have the portals. It was funny watching people scoot up to the boss for the balls, because there was some of the balls you could ignore if you held down the W key, so you wouldn't lose. There wouldn't be downtime for the melee players, rather than walking all the way out to dodge the purple balls. Very Mithras. This boss, it was easy to learn, but it was hard to master, kind of boss. It kept you on your toes because the images or shadows, they would pop up out of like, not nowhere, but you had to kill them really fast. And everyone had to like turn around and focus them. So you'd have to do like a 180 with your camera, kill it really fast, and then go back to the boss. And you had to be really accurate with the distances, because you had to spread for the plague mechanic, and if you were too far out, it would basically be a wipe. And if you were too far in, the plague would spread. So it kept you on your toes. But there wasn't much to like. I'm not sure what to say actually. Anyway, moving on. So the witches came after. This boss, or bosses, was pretty much the same as Heroic, apart from there was an extra witch, the green one, and you had to make an interrupt rotation. Man, this boss was really hectic. I remember, so there was always stuff flying across my screen. When we got the kill, like half the time I didn't know what was going on, because there was some stuff that you couldn't predict where. I never figured out how her spells worked, or the direction in which they went. It would always be in a line, but I don't know where the line went. I think it was, so she would target 2 players with this spell, and I thought that, well, this is probably how it worked, but there would be like a line of green fire coming down from those two players, in between those two players. And everyone had to move while those two players basically stood still so that they wouldn't be hit by the line. And I thought the line connected from player to player. But when I was looking at the line in particular, when I was looking at those two players, it didn't match up. So, anyway. So, stuff was always spells, stuff, everything. He was taking damage from everything. And so it was really easy to die. Even though the fight was pretty much the same as Heroic. The green ad, or the green boss, she only comes during the last phase. So, which makes the fight a lot easier. Because the fight would have been, in my opinion, way too hard if she had been there the entire time. Despite all of this, all the mechanics and our composition, I think we had like at least 9 or 10 melee players. We progressed really quickly. It wasn't one of the bosses we were stuck on for like a lot of wipes. Well, that's just my opinion anyway, because the fight was heavily range orientated. So the ads were stacked. Well, not the ads, the odds were stacked against us. The fight was actually good for Unholy because of our dot. And we had enough defensives to work around, like, if we got caught kind of thing. AMS worked for the debuff as well. The debuff where the healers had to top you off before you got stunned. So that was really cool. So did IBF, and so did our racial if you're human. Another thing that stood out was plugging this boss was extremely hard. You needed decent players to get through this boss on a pugger. Otherwise people will start running into each other with lightning, or get roasted by the flames, or they die to the Storm and Army combo. But the Storm and Army combo, like, you needed luck as well. Because sometimes they'd come in such a way that you wouldn't have enough room to move around. So the storm would keep going and going and going. And then the army would keep coming and coming and coming. And you'd get run over by the army. And running into the army is basically a one-shot. I think I'm going to stop it here. Simply because I have a lot to say on Agrabah and Argus. Anyway, so thanks for watching. Or listening rather. Goodbye.